Chapter 9, Premonitions. This route has had nothing but starting off a new chapter with, like, too many things for my brain to analyze and think about and react to, and I just end up being like a fish going wah, 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 with my mouth just opening and closing and nothing coming out. I'm like, I'm in Endgame's lab was like my first thought, and then all of a sudden this person, hello, you look so cool, man. Who are you? Lovely to meet you. Yeah, so, hi, Ian. Sorry that my brain stopped working. Ahem. Everything is fine. We're good.
As you can see, the tablet was in pieces when it was found. We've been putting it back together for 4 months as more fragments come to us from the field.
It really does have syndicate and Arrayan symbols on it, doesn't it? This suggests more of a cultural connection than I've ever heard of. It seems apparent Arrayans would have been aware of Syndicans, and perhaps the other way around. But this...
If it's a one-to-one translation, that would have incredible implications. Our linguistics department is treating it as such, but even with their theoretical language reconstructions, they may not make much headway since there's no outside frame of reference for either language.
That was true. The loss in languages, we knew thanks to the planetary AI, but it seemed like even they never deciphered Syndican scripts or Arrayan symbols. We couldn't do much more than theorize based on structure and assumption with the information we had. How many pieces was this fractured into?
Possibly hundreds. They're still pulling them out of the site.
He motioned me over to a set of drawers on the other side of the lab, pulling one open to show me dozens of fragmented bits of stone. Some only as big as a fingernail.
This is the latest batch. We've been testing to make sure they chemically match the others, before using our imaging models to reconstruct where they fit on the tablet. I'm hoping they find a bigger piece soon, considering a third of it is still missing. It'll be a nightmare if it's all micro-fragments and small pieces.
It sounds amazing.
I wouldn't give it up, but I some days wish I could still be as wide-eyed and excited as you are.
Somehow I'm looking forward to the days when I look as tired as you because I've been working on the things I love all day.
That level of enthusiasm is both refreshing and hilarious. We all feel it when there's a new artifact or something, but most of our time in the lab is analyzing and sorting through bits of rock and rubble. It gets pretty tedious.
Ian slid the drawer shut, and I turned to look at the artifact housed in what appeared to be a containment unit toward the center of the room. And this one?
Now this one's weird too. This one is a midrium, like a relic, but the symbols are melanoi, and it doesn't react to psi. Not even a little.
Really? That's so odd.
If it did, it wouldn't be up here in our lab, but down in the Neo-only section. Even someone like me can trigger relics, and I'm right at the planetary standard.
Interesting. I circled the containment unit, studying the artifact. The symbols were definitely melanoi, and on an imidrium item that didn't have the usual active circuitry. Something like this would rock the rest of the scientific community. As I studied it, there was a slight tingle in the side of my temple, spreading into my eye for a brief second. I put a hand to the side of my head, trying to rub it away. There was a flash of white and something odd, like an after-image burned into my vision before vanishing in an instant. What was that?
Hey, you okay?
Yeah, sorry. I didn't sleep well. Embarrassing as it is, I was a little too excited. I didn't expect to be able to come down to the lab like this. Girl, what just happened to you? Thank you so much for showing me around. It's amazing to get a peek into the work being done here.
Not at all. It's nice to have someone in the lab who doesn't look like they've missed 8 weeks of sleep and probably hasn't seen the outside world in just as long. and who still gets excited at the thought of sorting through 200 tiny fragments of a stone fragment and piecing them back together.
Alright, in this hallway.
So you were studying in New Albion? That's incredible. I've heard their education system is brutal.
You don't realize how brutal until you get out of it and realize how much less stressful life is. Though I still miss it sometimes. Ian and I were headed back up to the lobby after my limited tour of the research facility. I was buzzing with excitement and was currently doing my best to not appear unprofessional by bouncing down the hall like a child, but it was a struggle.
It sounds like you learn a lot, though. The curriculum seems amazing, even if it's tough.
I think it's the high expectations and fear of failure that gets beat into you that makes it tough. The workload is manageable.
That sounds accurate. So what brought you to Nisa from New Albion?
What are you doing here, Vic? Hello?
I'm sure you'll find it most enlightening when you...
Ian and I had reached an intersection of corridors at the same time as two other people, and there was a split second where we all froze in surprise. Vic Sager stopped short when he saw me, the look on his face odd and unreadable before he pasted on a smile. I think that's a squint if I've ever seen one.
Miss Leone, what a surprise. I can't say I expected to see you here, of all places.
I can't say I expected to see you here either.
Mr. Sager, it's been a while. I see you two already know each other?
Right now I'm working as an office assistant at the central building. It's sort of temporary, but we run into each other at work often.
Oh, I wasn't aware you were with us temporarily. Are you thinking of joining the Research Institute?
It's a possibility. Just a possibility at the moment.
A large possibility, I hope. Morgan's area of study was Senecan culture, so I was giving her a tour as a favor to a friend.
That friend being Quill Lawrence, of course.
He's helped me out quite a lot, so I wanted to return the favor.
Were you on your way out, Miss Leone?
I was, yes.
I'll walk you up. I was on my way out, too.
I didn't want to walk with this man. At all. But I also somewhat had the impression it would be viewed as both unprofessional and rude to reject the offer. You can just give him a tiny sideburst to the shin like we talked about. So I fixed my most polite smile on my face and did my best to bear with it. In that case, Ian, I'll let you get back to work. Thank you so much for showing me around.
Don't forget what we talked about. I'd love to read those papers on the Lena artifact if you can find the source material again.
I'll try to look them up and send you the information.
I hope to see you around, Morgan.
Same. Mr. Sager?
Oh, please, call me Vic. There's no need to be so formal. Baxter, we'll touch base later if that's all right.
Ian and Sager's faceless companion both nodded and went their respective ways, leaving me alone with him. Yay! He held a hand out, indicating I should go ahead of him with that benign politician smile still on his face. I kept telling myself it wasn't fair to dislike him because Quill didn't, but it was so difficult. I'm with you. I'm like, I don't like this guy, but it's purely based off the fact that Quill doesn't like him. He's literally done nothing to us so far, but I'm just like, Something about him was just incredibly off-putting.
I'm pleased to see you're thinking of getting involved in our research institute, Miss Leone. I've always thought you seemed far too bright to be a mere office assistant. But I had no idea you'd studied relevant subject matter before coming here. Has it always been an interest of yours?
Yes, since I was a child.
How fortunate for you that Quill has contacts all throughout the city in various fields.
It must be a side effect of being on the committee. After all, you're here as well because of a contact, right?
You're not wrong. Committee work affords us the opportunity to meet many people in many fields. And there's a great deal going on in Nisa these days, as you're aware. Much of it involves the future of institutions like our research facility here, so it's pertinent to the people who work here. It's always useful to hear what the public thinks of the city's future, what they want for it.
Yeah, he'd been getting a lot of public opinion these days, and sharing a great many opinions as well. I doubted he needed to come here to specifically ask some friend what they thought, as if he hadn't already made up his mind anyway. It made me wonder what his actual purpose was.
And what do you think about where the city is heading, Morgan?
I had to force myself not to flinch when he said my name. I don't know why, but I didn't like that at all. I'm not sure I've been here long enough for my opinion to mean much.
Nonsense. I think everyone's opinion...
But I think it would be a shame for Nisa to lose the things that make it special. It's an important place for people who need somewhere to belong. The Triad has deemed much of this population a danger to society, and shining a spotlight on the fact we're gathering right under their noses may be a little premature.
An interesting observation. I had forgotten you were new to the city, though, if I recall, you didn't go through the normal intake process.
How do you know that?
I see monthly reports on newcomers to the city, and your name hasn't been on any of them. But I did see you in the list of new applicants for Nisian residency.
Well, I came under unusual circumstances, that's true.
Circumstances that make you see the city as a safe haven for people who stand out, then?
I don't know that it's about standing out, per se. But yes, I do believe this city is a safe haven for many people. I'm not sure I support things that would upset that.
And if we could step out of the shadows without risking the population?
That might be wonderful in theory, but I'm not sure it's possible at this point in time, and certainly not without careful planning.
I see. That's precisely what Quill always says.
I merely happen to agree with him. Whoa, where are we? Looks like the blue version of Endgame's lounge area. I like it.
I understand the concerns you and others have. Of course, we want to do everything we can to safeguard what makes Nisa unique among other domes.
And its population.
Of course. But part of that is allowing the population to flourish in the open. That is what I believe.
I'm not sure anyone disagrees on that matter. Just about timing and process.
Perhaps you're right about that. It would be nice if we had at least some common ground of agreement to build upon. But sometimes I do wonder. However, sadly, I fear this is where we part ways. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with me. It was nice to hear your perspective. But I won't hold you up longer, Miss Leone.
How come you reverted from Morgan to Miss Leone again? Sussy baka.
I'm sure Quill came straight to the Institute after his return. I wouldn't be surprised if he's already waiting for you.
His return? How did you know he traveled today? I couldn't imagine Quill told Sager he was traveling to Areli. Unless this guy also kept track of reports regarding who entered and exited the city at all times, too.
I spoke to Locke Nikolov earlier today when they were on their way back. He mentioned they were returning from Areli together.
I see.
I'll be on my way then. Do be careful on your way home, Miss Leone.
Of course. You too. He inclined his head and left the lobby first. I watched him for a moment, oddly unsettled by that interaction. It was my first time having a proper conversation with him, and... yeah, I wasn't a fan at all. I was reaching for my handheld, intending to call Quill to see if they were back already, but it chimed first, the loud sound startling me. And it's Quill. Smiling a little, I answered as I loitered near the door. I was about to call you.
Are you finishing up? We got back to Nisa a while ago. I'm waiting outside when you're ready.
I was just leaving.
Is everything okay?
Everything is fine, I promise. How can he always tell?
Okay, we have a lot to talk about.
I thought we would. I'll be out in a minute. Quill sounded the same as always, but I had the sense that parting statement meant he'd learned things he wasn't happy about when meeting with Reuben.
He was a bit different in person. Not in a bad way. I still liked him. And I still think he's ridiculously honest. But damn, I wish he hadn't told me what he did.
It's better to know than to not know. I can't imagine how we're going to keep in contact with him if your calls and messages are being spied on, though. Oh, that's why he wanted to meet in person. That's how Vic knew you were out. He heard it from Locke. Through a call or a message, probably. That's the most worrying part for me. The idea that someone is watching you.
That part is a problem. The fact the Triad may be involved with some of Nisa's upper echelons is a bigger problem. If that's the case, it's no wonder I'm being monitored. Now it's about how much of what we know, they know.
I don't like that there are already rumors circulating about Nisa becoming publicly recognized. I'm shocked at Reuben's ability to dig some of this stuff up. He must be an amazing detective.
Well, turning up information is probably much easier when you don't have to worry about following rules.
Even the possibility that the Triad knew all about Nisa was strange to me. If it was true, the fact they'd done nothing about it meant Nisa's research meant more to them than who its population was. That should have been good news, but somehow I didn't think it was. I suppose we shouldn't be surprised if some of Stratum's board members have ties to the Triad. I wish I could say we should be grateful they don't have ties to Delphine, but...
Realistically, we can't count that out either, though he didn't have any evidence of it. Even the evidence connecting Stratum to the Triad is indirect, and... it's the fact he's convinced the city governance is involved too. I don't want to think he's right, but even I'd considered that possibility before.
Even if it's true, you don't know what it means for certain. If anyone on the committee or subcommittee has connections with the Triad, it could mean they're being manipulated rather than malicious. I can see the Triad placing someone in the right spot to whisper in the right person's ear.
That's perhaps the most optimistic take at this point.
And we both knew he wasn't an optimist. The entire time he told me about his talk with Reuben, I kept feeling more and more on edge. I just wanted to be home. It would have been nice if Locke had driven us there, but he had somewhere to be. Quill thought a walk home would clear his head a little. I gripped his hand tight in mine, all too aware how clammy they were. My whole body went cold hearing him talk about things like being spied on. Or conspiracies involving other committee members. Like Sager. I didn't want to think that, but he was quite pushy about public recognition these days. Was there a more significant reason for that than we'd all thought? Everything seems suspicious now. Everything. Everyone. If the Triad had ulterior motives for wanting Nisa in the public eye, that was difficult to deal with. They could steamroll people like Quill and Locke with virtually no effort. The fact Reuben thought Quill was being monitored was just one example.
How do you feel about all this? I know how important feelings are to you these days.
I rolled my eyes at his attempt to tease. I wasn't up to teasing back, though. I'm nervous. I can't say for sure if or when my feelings mean much, but I guess there is a sense of something much bigger than we realized. Much bigger than a few people trying to make money from leaking a bit of research. You know the feeling you get sometimes, where all the hair on your body stands on end?
No. I'm not familiar with that feeling. You may not have noticed, but I don't really have body hair. Not outside of what's on my head.
I never paid attention to that, to be honest. No? body hair? Anywhere? I suppose it would be a waste of materials unless you were going for an aesthetic. But now that he'd said it, I suspected I was going to be paying way too much attention to it. The smirk he's giving her like, oh, I know what you're thinking of, girl. I know. Moving on.
And now you're thinking weird things again. I shouldn't have said anything.
I'm not thinking anything weird. Don't assume things. I'm unsure what I'm feeling. Maybe it's just paranoia. But I know that if the Triad is involved in this, even in a tertiary way, it means we have to reevaluate a lot.
I agree. Most likely they're after Stratum and the Research Institute. But hell, it could be looking for a doorway to the wastes as well. I always thought if they learned about us, they'd try to shut it all down, but that was naive. They may be considering allowing Nisa public recognition so that in return they get much easier access to useful research. I imagine they'd regulate it publicly while continuing to dip their hands in on the sly. They may not like neo-humans, but if we're the only ones that can work with things like Arensol safely, they may ignore us. Or come up with some new regulation that allows us to be their workforce here.
I don't know how they'd keep Endgame from getting involved given the nature of Arensol.
Their only options would be to openly challenge Endgame, or else keep it off the books. Cover it up before going official and hide it under everything else, while ramping up the research.
How did one cover up something like Arensol, though? Way too many people knew about it. People like Quill and Locke, entire teams of researchers.
Of course, that's conjecture. We have nothing on their motivations, and only hints at their involvement. Knowing forces outside are potentially involved with this petition for recognition is a lot. We'll have to think about our timelines, and maybe even find a way to...
Hello? Quill's words were cut off by a squeal of tires on pavement somewhere down the street. There were sudden screams and the painful blare of car horns. What in the... Behind us was a scene that caused my heart to freeze in my throat. A small car careened off the street, maybe half a block away, swerving onto the footpath and barreling toward us and a dozen other people nearby. Before it, pedestrians dove out of the way, flattened themselves against store windows, and shrieked in panic. My thoughts slowed to a crawl in the horror of that moment. It was Quill that moved first, shoving me away from him and out of the path of the car. Good lord. Grab him and pull him with you, hold on to him and shield the both of you with Psy, try to divert the car's path with Psy. Thank goodness this isn't a timed choice. Okay, we're not confident. It leaves me two choices. I like the idea of using Psy. Maybe we can divert the car back onto the road away from people? Yeah, I feel the best about this one. Time slowed in that way that it does when there's a sudden emergency. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew I couldn't afford to freeze up. As Quill pushed me aside, I panicked for his safety, and mine. I didn't plan it. I just knew I needed to protect Quill with every shred of energy I possessed. This so-called gift I'd never wanted. It was all I had to keep him safe. Between us and the car speeding down the footpath, I erected a shield, weaving my Psy into a lattice the way Vale had explained during some of our brief sessions. Okay, still a shield. Whether my shield could withstand the force of a car slamming into it, I didn't know, but I had to try. If I just shoved the car away with telekinesis, it would endanger the people around us, so I had to try something else. I threw a hand out, wrapping my Psy around the car as if it was an extension of my arm. I both pushed it away while lifting it at the same time. It was the only way to not send it spinning into others. Its momentum was too great for me to stop all at once, so I let it carry itself forward a short distance, while lifting it high enough it wouldn't strike any people or vehicles. Nicely done. It was not as difficult as I thought it would be. The car was heavy, and the forward movement complicated things, and yet, I managed it. Without the friction of the tires on pavement, stopping it wasn't that difficult, and the car that had been wildly swerving toward us was now hanging above the street a few meters in the air. It all happened in less than a few seconds. I was panting, heart hammering against my ribs and shaky breaths tearing their way from my throat, but I did it. Okay, so was that an accident or was that deliberate? What's going on here? Sweat poured off my forehead, and in a moment of sheer disbelief and panic, I released the Psy holding the car like a child pulling their hand from a hot oven. There were a few startled screams as it slammed into the pavement. Glass shattered and went flying. Metal screeched. Something cut into my arm as my knees turned to jelly, and I realized how narrowly we'd missed being hit by that thing. Oh no! Even our boy's bleeding a little bit.
Morgan!
He caught me before I went down, and suddenly everyone else was shouting, running. It was like all the noise and chaos bled in at once. I just clung to Quill, wincing at the sharp stab of pain in my head.
Are you okay? Morgan! Are you okay?
He pulled away to search my face frantically. Yes, I think so. Just... adrenaline is gone now.
Give her some space!
He snapped it at multiple people who were crowding around us. Helping steady me on my feet, Quill led me to a bench a few meters away and had me sit down and lean forward. I did as I was told, trying not to pass out. Up, up, and away! It wasn't that heavy anyway. Good job, girl, you did it! I did that. I stopped that car. Is anyone badly hurt?
I don't think so. From what I can tell, people are mostly scraped up from trying to get out of the way. I think you were hit by some of that glass when you dropped that thing too.
I see.
That was incredible, but you scared the hell out of me.
I scared the hell out of myself, too. What about the driver? Was there a driver? Quill glanced back over his shoulder with a frown.
There isn't one. Looks like the self-driving function went berserk. Emergency workers are almost here from the sound of the siren, so let's stay put for a bit.
Self-driving function just happened to go berserk, huh? No driver? That was... strange. There should be enough safety layers to prevent that sort of thing. Quill sat next to me, giving me another cautious look before he pulled me into a hug. Aw.
That could have been bad if you hadn't been so quick thinking.
I just acted on instinct, I think.
Good thing your instincts are... telekinetic. God, that was terrifying.
Just a little. But at least no one had been seriously hurt. That was a miracle by itself. Emergency professionals arrived just after that. Quill wanted them to look at me, but there were others who were worse off. And I just wanted to get home. Get away from this place and decompress. Quill had some leftover medical supplies from when I first arrived, so I said we could take a look at my injuries there. They were minor anyway. He didn't like the idea, but eventually agreed on the grounds we'd visit Ripley when I'd calmed down. We were both told we'd need to file a report later, but for the time being, we wanted to get out of everyone's hair and let them clean up. We were both quiet on the way home, badly shaken from what had happened. It was only an accident, and yet, I was uneasy. I couldn't explain why. It just wasn't sitting right with me, this freak accident. I tried to push the sensation away. I mean, there could be like a King Esper around that controlled the car. Potentially. Or someone who could hack into it. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to talk to Vale about it later and see what they thought. After we'd had time to decompress and process what had happened. There's possibilities.
I swear, if I get one more call...
You won't do anything but grumble about it to me afterwards while being mostly polite on the call. Just like the last 4.
I have no idea how word has already spread.
It's been hours already. It would be much weirder if it hadn't spread. I rotated my shoulder, wincing at the way the exoderms pulled at it. We'd only returned home from Ripley's a little while ago, and we were both officially patched up. And fortunately, our injuries were of minor to moderate severity. Quill's were minor enough that the self-repairing capabilities of his synthetic skin could manage, and he wouldn't need additional treatment. His face was already back to normal. And I was also fine. I had needed sutures for one cut, but otherwise there was nothing major. I'd been worried about Quill more than myself. Neo-humans had only limited ability to self-heal, so I was glad that wouldn't be a concern.
I'm not happy that your abilities are being plastered everywhere right now.
Oh, is that what's going on? Well, that was inevitable after that little display, I'm afraid.
Since when are you the more calm one when it comes to your secret?
It's not been a secret. I haven't broadcast being an Esper, but I've hardly made an effort to conceal it. He flopped on the sofa behind me with a groan. I was half curled over a pillow with my legs stretched out in front of me because it was more comfortable than having my back against the cushion.
How are you feeling?
Sore. You?
Not sore, really. Our pain receptors work a bit differently.
How unfair.
I also can't pick up a car with my mind before it hits me and my boyfriend.
Boyfriend? Oh. Boyfriend?
Oh, am I not? At this point, I just assumed we were at that stage.
You and your assuming things instead of just talking to me about them. It wasn't like we'd ever officially said anything like that, though he wasn't wrong either. I mean, you are just flatmates who smooch and almost other things like every other night, but, you know, flatmates. That face. Quill leaned over me from behind, lips brushing my ear as he spoke.
If not a boyfriend, then what do you consider me?
My... Quill placed a soft kiss to my bare shoulder, his arm slipping around my waist.
Just someone who occasionally does things like this.
That's... technically the first time you've done that. He pressed his face to the side of my neck, letting out a shaky sigh.
I was so scared today, Morgan. I was barely thinking when I tried to push you out of the way. I didn't expect you would. What you did was amazing, but terrifying. I wasn't sure if you'd hurt yourself again with psi fatigue, and... Are you sure you're okay?
Still just a little sore. It's not even that bad. Not as bad as when I first got here.
It'll hurt more tomorrow, I'm sure.
It always does. He moved my hair aside, pressing another gentle kiss just behind my ear. I sucked my breath in at his warm breath brushing against my skin. He kissed a little further down, murmuring the word good against my back.
If I tell you that I want to kiss every inch of you and hold you until my heart is convinced you aren't going to disappear on me, would that be okay?
Are you asking permission to say it, or permission to do it?
Morgan, I want to be with you right now. I'm asking if you want the same. Or if you... Maybe I shouldn't be asking this. I know you're sore still. I know you're probably thinking about a lot of things right now.
I'm not that sore. I said this already. And I would prefer to be thinking about less, actually. I felt his forehead against my shoulder, his hair tickling me through my shirt.
Are you sure?
Yes. All right. We love a guy who asks consent and is like, "Hey, look, I want to do this with you. Is that okay?" So sweet. So sweet of him. All right, everyone buckle in. Probably happening tonight. Quill's weight shifted behind me, and as he spoke again, I felt his lips moving against the back of my neck between gentle kisses.
Would you tell me if you were too sore?
Would you tell me if you were?
I wouldn't be asking in the first place if I was.
I let out a soft, amused laugh. That was probably true.
You're not just saying this out of some bizarre need to pay me back for everything or something, are you?
I don't think I've ever indicated I intended to pay you back with my body, Quill. He was the one who laughed this time.
Good.
Quill's mouth traced a line of kisses down my spine. I like that he thought about that, though. Was like, you better not be doing it for this reason, though, so good on ya. The heat of each one seeped through the shirt I was wearing, raising goosebumps on my flesh. My eyes fluttered closed as he shifted again. His hands rested on my waist, then slipped under my shirt, one wedging itself between me and the back of the sofa before sliding around my ribcage to the front. I unconsciously lifted to allow them to move higher, and I soon found myself biting into the pillow to keep from whimpering at the tender touch of his hands and experienced fingertips. Experienced fingertips? Excuse me, hello? His mouth reached my lower back, where my shirt had ridden up enough to reveal bare skin, and the sudden sensation of his lips against me caused a soft moan to escape. And the shirt is off! Moments later, Quill pulled away from me, and I heard the unmistakable rustle of his shirt. I tried to turn toward him, but he was already pressing against me again, lips against my ear once more. And this time I could appreciate the heat of him on my back, though he kept the bulk of his weight off of me.
The funny thing is, at first you were just someone in trouble who needed help. But I realized so fast that I was going to be the one in trouble soon, and I still let you stay. Do you have any idea how much I was struggling back then?
Oh my goodness. So he's basically saying, like, from day one almost, I was like, oh no, I'm falling so fast. We love to see it. You didn't seem to be struggling at all. I seem to remember you quite contently being unconscious next to me with, My voice faltered when his teeth gave my earlobe a playful tug. With, no problems.
I still won't have any trouble being unconscious next to you. It's when we're both conscious it might become a struggle.
One of his hands slid carefully under me again, this time tracing a tight path over my stomach and dipping beneath my waistband. I couldn't hold back the pleased whimper as his fingers caressed me. A sigh ghosted across my shoulder in response. Quill? When I rasped his name, he finally shifted back, his hands going to my waist to very delicately pull me on his lap as he sat back on the sofa. Finally, I could turn and face him, placing my knees on either side of his body. Ooh, that's a spicy one. Hello. You guys look great. I captured Quill's face in my hands and placed an open-mouthed kiss to his waiting lips. Hunger stirred deep inside me as our tongues collided. Heat spiraled through my body at the touch of his warmth against me. His hands traced a light path over my back, gliding over my shoulder blades, trying to avoid the little nicks and cuts. He let out a soft groan against my lips, a remarkable and pleading sound, as if he was begging me to need him as much as he was trying to say he needed me. I'd been trying to avoid seeming clingy, needy, and he'd been trying to avoid pressuring me into feeling obligated to repay him. It was almost funny how afraid we'd been of making the other uncomfortable. And how desperately we'd fallen for each other anyway. I smiled against his lips and ran my hands through his hair, part of me marveling over how silky it was. My hands finally settled on his shoulders when we parted again. This time Quill leaned forward and pressed a fiery kiss to the center of my chest, pushing my shirt higher with languid ease. I shifted out of it and flung it away to parts unknown. Nice. Quill pulled me close again, letting his tongue explore the exposed skin, gently teasing and nipping until I thought I'd lose my mind. When our eyes met again, his surprisingly foggy with desire, I was so taken aback by the look on his face. Desperate, full of want and surprising uncertainty. He was so gentle and honest when it came to what he wanted and why he wanted it. How someone could be so kind and so tenderly rough around the edges was beyond me. It was such a baffling and wonderfully rich combination, contradictory and endearing. I wanted more of him. So much more. I kissed him again, shifting my weight against him to feel the pressure of his growing erection against me. We both let out simultaneous gasps at the jolt of pleasure. His hand slid to my hips, rocking me tight against him again as he murmured my name and strained upward toward me. And there's the hand holding. That's beautiful. I think this might be my favorite. Just the lighting and everything. Oh, so good. Expression intense. He moved my arms to rest on the back of the sofa on either side of him, and his mouth never left my skin as he, amazingly, managed the clothing situation with surprisingly little help from me. He was, as he always was, determined to take care of me, asking if I was okay, if this was okay. Eventually, I could only lean against him, crying out against his shoulder with every touch, kiss, or caress. Or alternately, press kisses of increasing desperation to his lips as the world melted away. We moved up to the loft a while after that. I had a quick shower first, though, and by the time that was done, I realized how utterly exhausted I was. It crept up on me, despite Quill's efforts to make sure I didn't overdo it. Probably should have thought of that before the tryst on the sofa. Though, to be fair, I wouldn't give up that tryst on the sofa for anything in the world. Quill, of course, had to tease me as we finally were lying curled together in his bed.
I suppose you're comfortable being unconscious next to me now.
We would have some serious issues if I wasn't comfortable sleeping up here after that. He let out a soothing chuckle, pulling me a little closer. I lay with my head on his chest, marveling at how warm he was. If I asked him whether neo-humans had a higher body temperature, he'd probably just laugh. I also noticed his heartbeat sounded odd. There was a thud, followed by a soft whine and a softer thud, then repeat. Similar to the familiar lub-dub of a human heart, but also rather different. I felt his lips on my forehead.
Morgan?
I was already dozing off to the sound of his unusual heartbeat.
Thank you for finding me that day. However you did it. I'm just glad you did.
Thank you for finding me back. He laughed again. And I didn't remember anything else before I was out.